Welcome back to the Culture Codex podcast. Today I'm joined by Don Leonard, a candidate running for Ohio's 15th Congressional District, at a moment when questions around democracy, immigration enforcement, and political accountability feel more urgent than ever. Don, you've been very outspoken about the corruption in politics, the impact of ICE raids on Ohio communities, and the growing disconnect between everyday people and the systems meant to represent them. So I'm super excited to dig into your campaign, what's happening on the ground right now, as well as what real accountability could look like moving forward. So Don, it's really great to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's awesome to be here, Devin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally, man. And I want to get this right off the bat. Patrick, unfortunately, could not join us today. He is out sick. There is a mad flu virus going around. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I'm sure you know at least somebody that's been infected by this awful stuff. But yeah, so, obviously we can go into your campaign and the motivation behind it. And plus, Patrick wanted me to relay the first question to you.
All right.
So you've described yourself as a do-something Democrat.
Yeah.
Brilliant, by the way. So what does that mean to you?
I think it means being willing to shut down the political machine until it starts working for working families. It means fighting.
Yeah.
And I think for so long now, Democrats and moderates on the Republican side have just said, if we just play ball, if we just compromise one more time, maybe the system will get around and start delivering. We are at a tipping point right now. We are on the precipice of seeing everything we care about in our country being taken away from us, right down to our democracy. And if we don't show that democracy can deliver, I think folks are going to start getting other ideas.
Right. Yeah, and that's the last thing we need. And, for people who may not know you yet, what moment or realization pushed you to run for office rather than stay on the sidelines?
I'm an educator by background. I've been teaching at Ohio State for the last 10 years. And I think the start of it for me was when I saw international students being disappeared off of campuses all over this country because they showed up for a campus protest against the atrocities in Gaza, thinking that they were living in a free country. And these were folks that were here legally on student visas, and goons in masks pulled them off the street, put them in a van, and in some cases took them straight to the airport and deported them. I was born in 1978. I remember the Cold War. And the first thing I remember as a kid was hearing that it was the kind of place where you had to walk around carrying your papers with you to go from A to B.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what I think it makes America so special, and it is our freedom. That's why we're this beacon, and that's why people flock to us. And when I see American citizens who don't present as being part of the white majority having to carry around their documents because they're terrified of receiving the same treatment, to me, that was absolutely a wake-up call that as somebody who presents as a person of European descent, if we don't stand up now, it could very easily be too late.
Yeah, and I know people in my circle already that are afraid to leave their house. And as soon as they heard about the ICE raids going on, and we will talk about that coming up. Yeah, people are starting to freak out, the people who aren't white males. So, yeah, it's very concerning. What do you think career politicians most misunderstand about the daily reality of the working class people that are living here?
I think part of the irony of the American political project is that a lot of our politicians are not the billionaires or the multi-millionaires. I mean, some of them do a lot of stock trading in Congress.
Right, yeah.
I think you have that on your checklist. So we'll put a pin in that one. Bad idea. But I think a lot of career politicians do know what's going on. They get it. The problem is that there's so much money in politics right now that the amount of distance between a politician's conscience and their public positions is getting wider and wider, because if you don't raise tons and tons and gobs of money, you don't get to play. or at least that's the perception. I think we're at a place now where the Democratic Party has been so obsessed about raising money, thinking that that's what's going to get us electoral victory, that I have this math equation in my head. Money times credibility equals victory. And if you have zero credibility, it doesn't matter how much money you've raised, nobody gives a about what you're saying.
Yeah, right.
And how much you're saying it on Instagram and news media and all the rest. So I think we have a credibility problem. And so we're going to run a race that will probably get, our opponents will probably outraise us, but we think we're going to outmessage them because we're going to look them folks in the eye and say, we hear you, we see you, and we're going to be your voice in Washington. Regardless of what Wall Street wants us to say, we're showing up for Main Street.
Do you think overturning Citizens United should be a focus of the Democratic Party?
It's job one.
Yeah,
absolutely. The crisis of the moment, at least the immediate one, is the affordability crisis. And that's been brewing for a really long time. I would say about 45 years since Reagan came into office and started dismantling government. But how we got here and how we got to the extent of the affordability crisis we are today is 100% about the amount of money coursing through the political conduits, not just what political action committees and wealthy individuals and businesses can give directly to candidates, but this dark money that allows anybody who has access to a billionaire to set up a 501c3, a 501c4, and just flood the zone with all this malarkey. And it all traces back not just to Citizens United, but to this creepy cult that's been hiding in plain sight for so long now. I see you nodding.
Yeah.
The Federalist Society, right? 6 out of the 9 justices we have in the Supreme Court right now were members or affiliates of the Federalist Society. They were groomed to believe 2 basic lies. Number 1, that corporations are people in politics.
Yeah.
And number 2, that money is speech in politics. And neither of those should be true. It's one person, one vote, not $1, one vote. And we are so far away from that now that some ketamine-addled lunatic waving a chainsaw, it was able to donate $250 million to Donald Trump's re-election campaign.
Yeah.
And he's not even the scariest billionaire, if you ask me.
You mentioned dark money. There's a really good book called Dark Money by Jane Mayer. She's an incredible journalist. I'm not sure if you've read it, but
I have.
It's some fucked up shit.
It's totally they name. It's not just the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
It's not just that. It's the Menards. It's like all of these low key, captains of industry who have their own little pet theories about the world, which is fine. I do too, and we'll hear about some of those today.
Yeah,
but I'm not running around throwing state and federal elections based on my pet theories.
Due to that, I feel like many voters feel cynical or disengaged from politics just because it's so depressing. What would you say makes your campaign meaningfully different than the usual promises that the Democrats spew?
Absolutely. So I would say 2 things. Number 1, we have a living wage agenda that is hold me accountable. These are promises that we're making, and either we will keep them or we will go down fighting for them.
Yeah.
Over the medium term, what we need to do is create an economy where one job is really enough to take care of oneself and a family if you decide to start one.
Yeah.
To some extent, we had this in the 50s and 60s after World War II. It was not a perfect economy. It was not an entirely just economy. But in certain features, before women entered the labor market, which I have a daughter, I think that's a really good idea. If women choose to pursue professional careers, hell yes. But what didn't happen in the 1970s and 80s as women were entering the labor market is household incomes didn't double all of a sudden, now that you had a 2-income household. What started happening is, corporations started cutting wages. Reagan started attacking the labor unions that had created have you ever heard this expression, Chicago rich?
No.
So apparently, the union movement was very strong in Chicago, and it was this expression to denote somebody who graduated from high school, got themselves a union job, and could not only afford to buy a home and start a family, but they could afford a little lake house, a humble one probably, but a little lake house where they could go fishing and boating in the summertime. And this is what they called Chicago rich. And we had some version of that. And I think, when I see a MAGA hat, I think that's what they thought was great, was this post-World War II period when unions were strong, when wages were more livable, and there was not just a living wage, but a thriving wage that you could actually afford to live out your version of the American dream. What we have now is everybody working their butts off because we're Americans. We are the most hardworking, productive, and innovative society on the planet. But at the same time, we're being squeezed so hard just to try to get to the end of the month and the end of the paycheck that, the amount of side hustles that people that I know, including like college professors, are having to take on just in order to make ends meet. So we've got to get on this living wage track, and we've got to be laser focused on telling the voters, these are the promises we're making. This is what you need to hold us accountable for. And if you don't think that we're fighting tooth and nail day and night for this, vote us out. Yeah. Right? I think that's number one. Number two is we should be expecting a lot more from our government. Not only are we the wealthiest country in the world, let me play a little game with you, a little game of high-low. How much, it's like kind of a 2 or 3-parter. How much money do you think we spend per person on government in the United States every year? So if you divided up, lumped up all the federal, state, and local spending and divided it up across all the people. So think about what you pay in your federal income tax or something. How much do you think we spend per person on government in the U.S. each year?
God, that's a really good question. I'm trying to, I'm trying to think.
Take a wild stab at it.
Again, I'm sure this isn't right, but I would like to see anywhere between like 50,000 and 6 figures.
Yeah. So you're right in the range there. We spend about $32,000 per person on government in the United States, and you have a sense that we're probably lowballing it.
Yeah.
In terms of what we could or should be doing, right? So you'd like to see 50 to 100. We're at 32 right now. Nice guess.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
How do you think 32,000 compares to some of these, quote, welfare states out in Western Europe? Like we're always talking about Sweden or France or Germany. How much, if you had to guess, do you think $32,000 is a lot more or a lot less than they spend on government?
Oh, yeah, hell of a lot less. I mean, considering they have universal health care, which every country should have, right? A lot of those countries have free or very cheap childcare,
So you're dead on with the first one and dead wrong with the second one. We spend exactly as much per person on government in the United States today as France or Germany or Sweden.
No shit.
You go to the OECD website, stands for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They're the nerds who round these numbers up and make each national government report. France, Germany, and Sweden are all right around that $32,000 mark. The American taxpayer is getting ripped off by its government because, like you said, affordable childcare, affordable housing, affordable college for those who want to go, pursue, a degree after high school. High-speed public transit, right? They have all these really nice things. We're paying for those things too. We just don't have much to show for it. I see that as an opportunity. I see that as a grand bargain where the billionaires who've been shirking on paying their fair share of taxes for the last 45 years start paying their fair share to pay down the deficit, while we as the taxpayers and the government agree to do more with what we've already got. Right? I think that's the grand bargain that is there to be grasped.
Yeah, and Columbus is the biggest city in the country that doesn't have rail.
I know.
And especially for young people like myself, we're tired of driving on 270.
Yeah.
to be honest. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not bashing the highway systems here because the highways are fantastic. Compared to other states like Indiana, which is very. As soon as you cross the border, it's like I'm not kidding. Like you feel it, right? It's pretty bad. However, I'm a big public transportation advocate. We should have rail. Considering our population is well above 1 million people.
Sure.
And people don't realize how big Columbus actually is. Like, I know, and the thing is, like, it's because of the suburbs. Like, the suburbs are all spread out everywhere. And, there's room there to put a few trains, let's be honest.
Absolutely. So we can make it happen.
Yeah, totally, man.
100%. Everybody thinks, mass transit's so expensive. Well, all the repaving of highways, all the building of overpasses, the widening of lanes, taking the environmental dimension of it off the table entirely, it's still bad math to have 100% of our transportation grid. I was talking to a planner. I've been teaching city and regional planning for the last 10 years, so it's music to my ears that you see the virtues of public transportation.
Yeah, totally.
But I was talking to this planner who's incredibly bullish about the autonomous vehicle. He thinks it's coming, it's exciting, and look at all these great things that are going to come with it. And some of those potential benefits are real. They don't require as wide of lanes. They're going to be smarter in terms of moving through tight spaces, so we can potentially shrink lanes and start widening sidewalks, putting in bike lanes, putting in tree lines, things like this. If the political leadership is willing to get behind that. But I asked him, I said, is there a way that the way that autonomous vehicles can stack up into these convoys and sort of go as a platoon, can that replace the train or the bus? And he said, no, man, that's just a math problem. If you're trying to move 100,000 people at rush hour in and out of, one place, you got to have transit.
Exactly, man.
It's a math problem.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Next, I want to go over the ICE raids in Ohio. Recently, you had a viral video about you and you calling them out and posting the video on your campaign pages, which is fantastic, by the way. And I love that message. The ICE raids have intensified. They sort of took a break over Christmas because the holidays or whatever. But
probably bad optics.
Yeah, for sure.
Disappearing refugees on Christ's birthday.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What's more Christian than that, fellas? Yeah, it's fucked up. What are you hearing directly from communities on the ground that isn't being reflected in mainstream coverage?
Well, predating the arrival of ICE to Central Ohio in force, we had the President of the United States spewing vile on national airwaves that our Somali American residents are, quote, garbage, and that they all should go. And what I've been hearing from not just Somali Americans, but Muslim Americans of all stripes here in Central Ohio is that now their kids are getting bullied in our schools. Now, a woman wearing a hijab was at a gas station pumping gas and got attacked. When the president speaks, their words have power. And right now, that language is being used to terrorize people who are here legally, people who are contributing to the revitalization of Central Ohio, entrepreneurs, and folks who are seeking refuge from a civil war that the United States has some history with Black Hawk Down and the operations in Mogadishu,
right,
where we walked away from a famine when 19 U.S. soldiers were killed. It's just to say our fates are intertwined. Central Ohio is lucky to have our Somali American neighbors. And what Trump is doing, not just by spewing this hatred, but deploying ICE forces to Minneapolis, the number one location for Somali Americans. And then right after that, and right before Christmas, sending them just by coinkydink to Columbus, the number two location for Somali Americans. This isn't some programmatic, good faith effort to enforce U.S. migration laws. This is an effort to terrorize Ilhan Omar and other minority members of the Democratic House and Senate into submission by our president. He is using our neighbors as political pawns to go after elected officials.
Right.
And it's disgusting and it's un-American. And I think anyone who wants to see us be a country where free speech and free political organization and just the freedom to walk down the street without being worried about government goons coming after you, Republican or Democrat, should be up in arms about this right now.
Yeah, it's blatant fascism. It is the warning signs that we have learned about in our history courses. And, supporters of these actions, they often say like, oh, it's just, enforcement of the law. How do you respond when families, workers, and even U.S. citizens are being caught in the crossfire?
Yeah. Well, first of all, so much disinformation out there. Every person residing on U.S. territory is entitled to the protections of the Constitution, including due process. And no due process that I could possibly fathom would justify ripping a parent out of their vehicle while the kids are strapped into their car seats in the back seat. Unless they are some violent serial killer, there's a better way to do that.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing instead is parents being separated from their kids while dropping them off at school without any attempt to verify identity and confirm, again, due process, without reading them their Miranda rights. And then these kids strapped into the backseat are being sent off to Child Protective Services, having no idea where their mother or father just got detained. If I woke up tomorrow having just had an incredible fever dream and found out that this was all just some bizarre overnight, dreamscape, that would make so much more sense to me than what I'm seeing on the news right now. So I think, first of all, making sure folks know that this is not legal. It is unlawful. It doesn't conform with our Constitution. And secondly, for those who say, well, they're all criminals if they're not here as documented citizens. No, we have civil law and we have criminal law.
Right.
And being here overstaying a visa is not a criminal offense. It's a civil offense, like if you get caught speeding, right? There are ways that we can and should enforce our immigration laws. This is not one of them. And then thirdly, for those who are getting arrested, these are not hardened criminals. 74% of those detained by ICE, for which there are, I think, over 60,000 in detention right now, in conditions that to me are uncomfortably comparable to what I recall reading about at the concentration camps in Germany. So I agree with you on the fascism thing, and I do not use that word lightly. 74% of those detained have no criminal history whatsoever. So this is not about hardened criminals. This is not about public safety. And it is absolutely unlawful to have individuals deprived of due process in this regard. I think that's what I would want to make sure that we're all on the same page on.
Yeah.
And then we can start having a constructive conversation about how immigration laws can and should be enforced.
Right. And do you believe state and local governments in Ohio are doing enough to protect residents from federal overreach, or are they complicit through their silence?
I think the city of Columbus, which is where I live, has done an okay job. Mayor Ginther went on television not only to assure our residents that the city of Columbus will not be cooperating with ICE agents in the apprehension of its residents. They are simply there to provide law and order, I guess, and helping make people who are concerned about their rights aware of the resources that are available.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, myself included, gets an A+ right now. This is jury duty, people. We all need to be stepping up and getting to work. Organizations like there's a group called Progress Grove City that stood up a program called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And what they're doing, they stood it up during November when President Trump was withholding SNAP or food stamp benefits during the government shutdown. totally unnecessary, even illegal. The judges had ordered them to release those funds, and they took a month to do it. That infrastructure is now being used to help migrants and those who present as, quote, out of the white power structure and who are afraid for their safety.
What concrete actions can elected officials take to resist or limit the harm of ICE raids beyond statements and just press releases?
The first thing I would do, I would be knocking on the doors of Butler County's jail and demanding that the sheriff show me the conditions under which these ICE detainees in Central Ohio are being kept.
Yeah.
I think shedding light on those facilities and letting those individuals know that we care and we're here to support the county jail if they need resources, but we are here to make sure that everyone in the custody of the government, either federal, state, or local, is being treated as humanely as possible, and making sure that the families of those detained know exactly where they're at, and that these individuals are being given access to lawyers, being given access to phone calls to check in with loved ones. I think that's something that any elected official should be demanding right now.
Right. And it's alarming that, okay, so I have a couple friends in Canada. They've been lifelong Canadians. And they, I'm sure you've heard about the 60 Minutes episode about pretty much the concentration camps, that whole documentary. There's really no other word to describe what we're seeing.
It's a logistical problem to gather up tens of thousands of people and not treat them humanely. And the government sometimes gets it wrong. And so what do you know? There's our concentration camps.
Right. My Canadian friends, they had to send me the documentary out of country because the media is now being censored.
Yep. First of all, we have problems with media organizations constantly doing mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
So they want to get their mergers approved and play nicely there. But, President Trump doesn't even hide this. He actively calls on anyone who speaks ill of him to be taken off the air. We saw that with Jimmy Kimmel. We see this left and right. Stephen Colbert has gone through it. Again, what bizarre timeline are we on right now, man?
It's a bad fever dream, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
So it's rough. Every day gets worse. And
right.
I feel that they're not taking this situation as seriously as people like you are. And they don't, they sort of normalize it, I guess. Like they understand the stakes. However, like they don't call it what it is. From the past, 20 minutes that we've been talking, you seem to understand the true gravity of the situation here.
And you're saying that establishment Democrats don't?
I mean, again, not all of them. I've met a lot of establishment Democrats, and some of them are decent people. That want to see the world, a better place. I may not, align with them politically on everything because I'm a pretty strong progressive. So, but if you want to be a strong progressive, you have to learn how to compromise with establishment Democrats, get the right message of getting money out of politics, advocating for universal health care, cheaper education. There's ways around it, and to not sound so emotional all the time, because I feel like that's our main problem.
As a progressive, what I'm seeing, and again, up until 5-6 months ago, I was just another Central Ohio resident, picking up my sample ballot and trying to, hope that whoever told me which judge I should vote for knew what they were talking about, right?
Yeah.
I've met a lot of establishment Democrats, elected officials since entering the race, and I'm simultaneously impressed and depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm impressed because, again, I think a lot of them do get it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them were where I am right now, which is somebody who, take Allison Russo. I met her about a couple blocks from here at a brewery on Main Street when the Madison County Dems had their holiday party, a few weeks ago. And, Allison Russo, she's been the House Minority Leader for the Democrats.
Yeah.
She signed off on some redistricting maps that the Republicans put forward that drew a lot of criticism from progressives.
Right.
We're just enabling them and playing ball. What I didn't know about Alison Russo is that she was one of those people on November of 2016 who woke up to a world where Trump was president and said, oh, hell no, and entered the fray and ran for and got elected to the State House in 2018. So, and she did so with a 6-week kid on hand, which my daughter, we were talking before we went on air, is coming up on her first birthday.
Yeah, congrats, man. That's
And
awesome.
thank you. Thank you. I think a lot of money changed hands when friends of me realized, oh, wow, Don really can keep a kid alive.
Yeah, hopefully you're sleeping.
Yeah. Oh, she's my daughter's an amazing sleeper. She is such a blessing.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. We won the lottery on that one.
Nice.
But immediately, I'm sitting there listening to Alison Russo tell this story, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're the establishment? Oh, I vibe with you.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a couple things that play here specific to ICE. Number one, we know that next to affordability, fear about immigration and the lack of control at the border was one of the top issues that got Trump elected in 2024.
Right.
And so any Democrat running in a pinkish red district feels really leery about coming off as being, you know, as soon as we posted that ICE video, half of our, I think, virality is a bunch of trolls who just jump on our, you know, anything that has to do with ICE and start accusing me of being an open borders, you know, anarchist, right?
Yeah.
And I think there are some elected officials in the Democratic Party that we would consider to be the establishment by this point, who are really afraid that by being too vocal on the public-facing side are going to be torn down and voted out of office. And, you know, guess what? We do have to win in order to put forward our vision and our agenda. But what I would say to them is to give the voters credit. I think that if we assure them that we recognize that the Biden administration got a lot of stuff wrong during their presidential 4 years in terms of taking border security seriously, and that created a lot of the confusion and mayhem that really disturbed a lot of Democrats and independents living near the border. And creates the kind of narrative that Trump was able to exploit in 2024, that Democrats are soft on the rule of law.
Right.
I think we could be simultaneously full force for enforcing our immigration laws and completely against this Gestapo shit that we see the Trump administration going about doing it for enforcement. These are not hardened violent criminals, 74% of them. They are tax-paying residents who don't get any benefits for the taxes that they pay because they're not going to be eligible for Social Security. They're not going to be eligible for unemployment insurance, but they're paying into all those programs. They are not drawing down our social safety nets. They're paying into them without benefit, many of them, right? So I think there's a way that we could sort of take some of the pressure and the intensity down a register, while at the same time reminding everyone that migrants are not the reason why our times are so hard right now.
Right.
They are being used as a tool and a pawn and a distraction from the real enemy, which, as Bernie loves to say, the billionaires.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And in this whole idea that progressives and Democrats are for, you know, open border chaos, it's just not true. Even Bernie stated plenty of times that, hey, you know, if you want
to be a country,
if you want to be a country, you need strong borders, and we're not advocating against that. However, we need to have policies in place and avenues to where we invite immigrants, because that's what makes America great. Have them come here, you know, in a relatively easy process, and have them contribute to our society. That's the whole goal, you know, and it should be.
And I think where we're at right now, this is politics under the condition of scarcity. And it's not scarcity that's naturally occurring on the planet or in the United States. It's an artificial scarcity brought about by a winner-take-all economy where a very small sliver of Americans bring home most of the loot that we all, everyone in this room and most of the people listening to this podcast contribute to, right? So we're under this artificial condition of scarcity, and everybody's trying to fight for what little crumbs make it down to the bottom 80% of American society. And if we see some, first generation American, working a really hard job, oftentimes that many, U.S. citizens are unwilling or unable to do, they see that and they think, oh, they're just taking, from our pie, right? It is not a zero-sum game where in order for Americans to win, migrants have to lose. If we shut down the border tomorrow in terms of illegal immigration, which I think we should put a stop to undocumented migrants coming into the U.S. And here's why. There's no protection when they get here.
Yeah.
They don't feel empowered to report wage theft if their employer starts withholding wages. If they're victims of human trafficking or domestic violence, they don't feel safe calling the police.
Yeah.
Everyone who is in the United States should be documented. And as soon as we impose that constraint, every chamber of commerce in the country is going to be screaming at the Republicans and the Democrats to start issuing more work visas. And that's how we should bring folks into the United States, with documentation, with paperwork. And then at that point, we realize that the country, the birth rate in the United States is not enough to support this incredibly prosperous, incredibly rapidly growing economy. And we need more hands on deck in order to grow the economy. And we can do that without making times harder for the people who are helping grow that economy.
Next, we can go over corruption and power, accountability. You've been very vocal about this, and you've spoken publicly about corruption, especially on your, on the campaign trail and your social media accounts. So how does corruption actually function in Ohio politics day to day, and where does it tend to hide?
In plain sight. Corruption is legal in the U.S. That's the big difference between us and a lot of countries in the global South. In Latin America, where I spent a lot of my time as a researcher, these quote banana republics, corruption is in unmarked bills being passed by suitcase, right? Here in the United States, over the last 45 years, we've legalized corruption. And that, I think, my wife was helping me out with Googling this. What is the difference between something being legal and something being lawful? Something being legal means that it violates no government statute, right? Something being unlawful means that it clashes with our basic founding documents and principles like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and The Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose.
Yeah, nice.
I am anti-fascist and I vote. If I'm not allowed to vote, I will fight the fascists and I will punch them in the nose because I don't like fascism. I learned it from my grandpa.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So what's happened over the 70s and 80s is an incredibly wealthy group of individuals. You know this because you've read Dark Money. An incredibly wealthy and bored group of people who really hate paying taxes. It just irks them.
They're anarchists.
Fundamentally, I think that's true. That's the fair point. And so they wanted to shrink government so that they could promote a society where they have no constraints on the ability to assert their power through their pocketbooks, right? And so what they do is they fund organizations like the Heritage Foundation, like the Cato Institute, like the American Enterprise Institute. And they set up a little club on every law school campus in America called the Federalist Society. And the Federalist Society had one job and one job only: to groom lawyers to become judges and to create a bench of judges at the state and federal level that would all agree that wealthy people, and I'm not talking about, somebody who started a business,
Right. Yeah.
patented a great idea,
Yeah.
trying to live their American dream. We're talking about morbidly rich people,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
The morbidly rich, the billionaires.
Yeah.
I'll stop doing my Bernie impression now. I am not a democratic socialist, but I really admire that dude.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of stuff right. The morbidly wealthy wanting to have complete unrestrained power to do whatever they see fit. And that's what the Koch brothers wanted. They wanted, they were in the oil and gas extraction industry. They wanted the ability to pollute our nation's waterways without any environmental protection agency recrimination. Right. I'm not sure why the Menards are so hell bent on anarchy, but they also donated heavily to found these libertarian anarchist organizations. And by the way, I think the term libertarian, I have very close friends who are libertarian. I think we agree 100% about 30% of the time, because the whole social freedom thing. Absolutely. Love who you want to love, live how you want to live, as long as you're not hurting anybody else.
Right. Yeah.
The problem is, where I come down as a proud Democrat, is believing that in order to have a healthy competition, we need referees on the field. And the government is the referee in this free market economy.
Yeah. Dark Money is a book that everybody should read. By the way, the author and the incredible journalist Jane Mayer, she is fantastic. She's
got the receipts.
Yeah, and
the footnotes are there.
It is all accurate data. It is.
She tells you when she thinks she's speculating because she has heard unconfirmed sources, but most of it's all just receipts.
She spent something like 3 to 5 years writing the book. I mean. Yeah, it is.
I thought, as a professor of social sciences, I thought I knew everything I needed to know about dark money. My jaw dropped in the first 5 pages.
I know, man.
That country club in Palm Springs after Obama gets elected, where all these, again, very bored, morbidly wealthy people started plotting revenge.
And we're seeing it right now.
Yep.
I mean, they have infected and plagued our universities, our lawmakers. They're everywhere.
Everybody talks about Steve Bannon. The original Steve Bannon was Karl Rove, and Karl Rove was helping organize these billionaires and direct their energies back in 2008 to early 2009. And they came up with this idea called Red Map, where they were going to start a pipeline of Republican candidates in school boards and city councils and state legislatures that would eventually, spoiler alert, gerrymander the snot out of state and federal legislative bodies and the districts that voters vote for. We don't want a world where politicians pick the voters.
Exactly.
The voters get to pick the politicians. It's kind of 101 stuff.
Yeah, right.
And they bragged about it in the Wall Street Journal. Karl Rove gave interviews saying, yeah, we're going to get these folks into the state legislature. We're going to use computers to rig the districts so that Democrats are unelectable for a generation. And here we are.
In your opinion, who benefits from all that?
The joke is not even the morbidly wealthy, not even the morbidly rich, because here's the problem. When you allow so much wealth to be concentrated in the hands of so few people, there's nobody left to buy the stuff.
Yeah.
And these folks are not like even captains of industry. So many of them are like trust fund babies and folks who just make money day trading on financial transactions that have no socially redeemable outcome whatsoever, right? It's just parasitic drag on the free market. And, the interesting thing about the free market, since we're on a podcast, I can go into a little bit of texture here.
Yeah, please.
Adam Smith, the founding father of free market economics, right? His book is divided up into 5 parts. And the 5th part, he calls it the 5th book, basically describes all of the areas where markets are prone to failure and where we need government to provide things like transportation infrastructure, like, public education, right? Because he recognized that rational individuals, if left to pursue their own self-interest, will not always come together to provide these kinds of public goods that we really care about. So even Adam Smith, the earliest theoretician of the beauty of the free market, understood that he invented the theory of market failure and told us where it would be expected to pop up. And that same guy, the reason he was so afraid of government is because he knew that government and politicians could be captured by wealthy individuals and corrupted into doing things that were against the interests of consumers. I think the prescription isn't to abolish government because it's susceptible to corruption. I think it's to get the money out of politics.
Right. Next, we're going to go over the media, the misinformation, and public trust.
Yeah, let's go.
How much damage has misinformation done to public trust in our democracy, and who profits most from that confusion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm living this reality on the campaign trail. When you see people posting, when our campaign started, we started our campaign's Facebook page, right? A totally virgin algorithm that has no idea what our politics are left or right. The algorithm just knows we're really into politics. So the news feed for Don for Ohio's Facebook account is just full of all these, if SNAP benefit recipients weren't just basking in luxury of filet mignon, I could afford to feed my family. Right. If migrants weren't, running our social services into the ground, I could afford to feed my family. And it's like, brother, our recent migrants and, our hard-living folks who find themselves falling between the cracks, they are not the reason why times are hard, my friend. We've got to combat this narrative, but the zone is, again, just so flooded with not just like misinformed individuals, but with, we know, like Russian bots that are trying to sow social discord within the American public. They're running a psyops operation against American democracy.
Yes, they are.
And I'm not going to say they're winning, but they're scoring victories.
Yeah. And by the way, one of my favorite authors, Woodward.
Bob Woodward, yeah.
And Craig Unger, he wrote American Compromat. And it's a book about the story about how Donald Trump was manipulated by the Russians and the KGB since the 80s. And that's another book for everybody, or that everybody should read. And it is very intensive research that Craig Unger did. Trump wanted to build one of his towers in Moscow. Even in New York, he had KGB agents living on the 3rd floor of his
Trump Tower.
Yeah.
Wow.
People are warning us that, the fascism or the steps leading up to fascism are here. Even some college professors are leaving the U.S.
I have, international students I advise who, at various junctures have not been able to go home for the holidays because of fear that they won't be able to get back in. This isn't America, folks. This is not how we do business. And we are going to put this chapter so far behind us, and we are going to teach about it so that it never happens again.
Yes, 100%. What happens if Ohio voters don't show up or disengage in this election?
No, this is absolutely make or break. Again, I love teaching. My wife and I had a kid in January, and she is the best thing that ever happened to me. I couldn't do her bath time and tuck her in last night because I was at a house party trying to get us across this fundraising finish line, right? The reason I am here is because these are not normal times. We're not just debating, supply side trickle down economics versus, demand side, right? We are talking about the very core foundations of democracy and freedom. And I am terrified for the future that my daughter is looking at. I mentioned this in a stump speech a while back, and it was just kind of a throwaway line that came to my head, but somebody came up to me afterwards and said it really struck them. My daughter, having been born in January of 2025, God willing, will live to touch the 22nd century. And this is not the Back to the Future Biff president timeline that I want her to be on. And I don't want any of my students who've come through my classroom to have to live through that timeline. And we know how quickly I have been taught in the last 11 months how quickly something is enshrined as a 250-year-old democracy can absolutely spiral out when the judicial branch and Congress fail to exert checks and balances on executive power. And right now, the judicial branch is absolutely abdicated on this absurd notion called the unitary executive, right? Congress needs to be the firewall to shut this down, and we've got to do it in 2026 because we cannot afford another January 6th in 2028 when the country votes this guy out and votes his friends out with him, and they don't want to vacate.
For someone listening who feels powerless, what is one concrete thing they can do this week that actually matters?
Absolutely reach out to everyone you know who you think might be afraid right now and let them know that you stand with them. And if there's anything that you can do to help them, to please let them know. Again, our Somali American neighbors and anyone who presents as maybe of Muslim or Arab descent, they are really afraid right now, and these are our neighbors. Mm-hmm. So I would absolutely say don't make folks have to come to you to ask for help. Reach out. This is, again, kind of neighbor to neighbor, block by block. We need to come together and stand up and fight. We also have really powerful organizations here in Central Ohio. One is called CRIS, C-R-I-S. And if you're not familiar with them, Google them, look them up. They are fighting the fight right now. They are suing the pants off of people who need to be sued. They are protecting people, providing legal and other kinds of services. So if there's no one you can help directly, help them help people. And just show up, man. I think the more of us show up at these events from all walks of life, Republican, Democrat, Scientologist, I don't care.
Yeah.
This is not American. It's not right. And we've got to lock arms here and shut it down because, again, the history books are instructive of what happens if we don't.
Don, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. And I'll tell you what, man, when you win, the fire's coming. Like it is, you're here to play. And yeah, you're the real deal, man. Seriously.
Thanks, dude. You guys and your independent media is part of what's going to keep us moving. So let's go.